Lighting is one of the most important aspects of filmmaking and photography. And today I'll show you 3 different lighting shots I made with only 2 external lights. I used 2 brand new 50-watt battery charged lights from Geo, but more on them later. The first lighting setup is a simple talking head shot. I used 2 practicals to light up my background as I'm doing right here, and then I used the CX50 RGB light over there as a rim/hair light together with a reflector dish. This actually gives you that 3D look and makes sure that you stand out from the background. And then I used the CX50 with a softbox as my key light. At first I thought the color temperature was a bit too warm and I cooled it down a bit, because I feel like when you have like a warm color temperature in your background, then it's always nice to have like a cooler temperature as your key light to light up your face, because in this way you're actually creating some contrast in the color temperature of your lighting and just your image in general. Same as you want to like create contrast in your image by using brighter parts and darker parts, you also want to do that with your lighting. Otherwise, when everything becomes the same, it just becomes kind of boring. Unless that's the look you're going for with some kind of monotone looks, for example. And I felt like the key light was a bit too dark, so I increased it a bit. Here you can see the entire setup with which I shot this talking head shot. I also used the black side of this 5-in-1 reflector thingy to block out the window light, because the window light was lighting up my face way too much. I also could have just closed down blinds, but for the sake of this tutorial I just wanted to show you another way for if you wouldn't have blinds. In the second talking head shot I wanted to try something different. So I used the CX50 over here as my key light, and I put like the diffusion part of this 5-in-1 reflection thingy in front of me to actually diffuse the light a bit more, because otherwise the light was just going to be way too harsh to be used as a key light, unless that's the look you're going for. And then I used the CX50 RGB with the spotlight mount to shape this light behind my desk, so it forms some kind of leading line which leads your eyes to me. And to finalize this image I added a bit of haze to add some depth and soften up the image. And here is what the entire setup looked like. We have a pretty small bathroom, so I only had limited space to place my lights. First I used the CX50 RGB and I pointed it with the reflector dish towards the ceiling with some kind of green bluish light. And bouncing this light off of the ceiling is what lit up most of the room. And if you have white walls, then it's always nice to bounce some light off of the wall, and that makes the light less harsh compared to directly pointing the light to your face. This monotone look is pretty cool already, but I wanted to have more color contrast into my image, especially because we have 2 lights to play with. So I used the CX50 with a warm temperature and put it on the shelf of our bathroom cabinet. And then I pointed it towards the wall so it could bounce the light towards my face. And after that, I just started playing around with different color combinations, because that's eventually what filmmaking and photography and playing with lighting is. It's just experimenting and see what kind of situations work for you personally, and just to find out what your taste is. This shot might look way more complicated than it actually is. For this shot I just used one light. I pointed the CX50 RGB light with a red hue towards the ceiling, and then I just added some haze to the shot, and that's it. That was this entire shot. So now let's talk about the lights for a little bit. So there's an RGB and a bicolor version, and I don't really talking about specs too much, so I'm just going to show it right here, and you can pause this section of the video to see what the specs actually are. What I really love about these lights is the fact that you can use them without any cables. You can obviously still use them through PD charging, but also with a battery pack and a simple USB-C cable. So that's something that I really love. And this is one of the native CY mount accessories I was talking about. So this is a little softbox that can come in very handy, especially when you're in tight places. But because the surface area of the softbox isn't that big, the light is always going to be harsher than compared to using a larger softbox. But Zhiyun also has a bones mount adapter that you can buy for pretty cheap. I bought it for like 40 euros, and then you can just adapt all your bones mount accessories like bigger softboxes. And like the spotlight mount I used in this video. You can also play around with some lighting effects like with all the other Zhiyun lights, which is pretty cool. And the biggest pro for me personally is the fact that you can control these lights through the ZY Vega app from Zhiyun. And that's super great, especially if you just stay in one ecosystem of one brand. Almost all of my lights are from Zhiyun, for example, and I can just control everything through this simple app. As you can see, here are all my lights, and I can just control them easily through my phone. And now this one, and now I can turn them all at the same time on again. Ta-da! That's amazing, isn't it? You can also dial in the colors and all those kind of things if your light is able to do that. There's one update that I hope that this app will get in the future. And that's the fact that you can control the lighting effects through this app. You have to do that manually through the light itself, and I just find that a bit cumbersome and annoying. And another thing that I hope to see in the future is that when using these lighting effects, you can also change the colors if it's actually an RGB light. For example, if you would have the faulty bulb lighting effect, then I could make it like red, for example. But those are just tiny little remarks, and other than that, I really love these lights. And the sound of the fan is pretty noticeable, especially as I have the light at 100%. I'll just... So that was with the mic right in front of the light. Now I'm like 1 meter away from the light. And this is 2 meters. I'm pretty sure that you won't be able to hear this anymore. Anyway, the great thing is that there are all these voice isolation features through all our NLEs and stuff, so I think this is a non-issue. And I also can just touch the light. It doesn't really feel warm. If you're interested in buying or checking out these lights yourself, check out the link in the description below for a 10% discount on either of these lights. By the way, if you enjoyed this video, you will enjoy this video about filmmaking lighting as well. Peace!